thanks for coming on. This weekend I opened the FD on Saturday morning and I saw this. It was the cover story. It said Sulletjes. I don't know how it translates very well, but of the bank has now become the rock stars. Fish, WorldPay, Adyen, they're totally dominating payment, which was an area that banks sort of neglected. If you'd be working at a bank in the 80s and the 90s, if you would be working on payment services for consumers, you'd be in the basement, right? And now you're in the quote 500, so that's the difference. And this sort of disrupting startup fintech mentality, I guess everyone here wants to be on the right side of things and to make sure that you're, in a bigger balloon, you end up right over there. So that's what the talk is about: how to make sure that your digital team that you're part of, or that you're about to launch, is going to be successful and delivers results. I'm not going to advocate for digital transformation here, but right by now that's a fact. But I want to spend maybe a couple of minutes to look at the definition a little bit of it, and why that is important for your digital teams. Now, as Daniel mentioned, we are about accelerate and reinvention. And if you look at digital transformation, because to us that's what digital transformation means. And if you look at accelerate and reinvention, if you look at accelerate, it's about the plus 10%. Right? Accelerate is going faster with what you already have by implementing digital means. You can add on, you can shift a process from phone to web to mobile. You can speed up your production process, your design process by implementing digital means. And it's all very valid and it's all very useful. And it's all about taking your existing business and just making that better. Now, if you look at reinvention, this is what the famous times 10 means. It's the opportunities, it is to try to grab the opportunity to make a fundamental new business, to try to find new services, new products, new audiences, new markets, so to speak. The thing is, why this is so incredibly hard to do is for incumbent organizations, you have to get back to the roots of where it all started. Because every organization in its core started with an entrepreneur dreaming up a new product or a new service, building it, getting it to market, and build a business from there. And then, at a certain point, you become an incumbent. You become a big name player, you have an existing market, you're doing well, and you're just focusing on the plus 10%. And the digital transformation, I think if you just go for the 10%, it's not enough. You should also try to go for the times 10. And the times 10, I think the digital teams and the digital labs and the corporate startups have a really good opportunity to grab that times 10. But I think one point is of the essence of how to address that, of that digital team. And it's best explained, and it's a 1.5 minute video by, of course, Steve Jobs, who else? And he's talking about the decline of Xerox and IBM. They were really hot in the 60s, 70s, you can ask your parents. And he explains why they are going down and what is needed to change that.
And I think I understand it now pretty well. What happens is, like with John Scully, John came from PepsiCo, and they at most would change their product, once every 10 years. I mean, to them, a new product was like a new size bottle, right? So if you were a product person, you couldn't change the course of that company very much. So who influenced the success of PepsiCo? The sales and marketing people. Therefore, they were the ones that got promoted, and therefore they were the ones that ran the company. Well, for PepsiCo, that might have been okay, but it turns out the same thing can happen in technology companies that get monopolies, like, IBM and Xerox. If you were a product person at IBM or Xerox, so you make a better copy or a better computer. So what? When you have a monopoly market share, the company's not any more successful. So the people that can make the company more successful are sales and marketing people. And they end up running the companies. And the product people get driven out of the decision-making forums. And the companies forget what it means to make great products. Sort of the product sensibility and the product genius that brought them to that monopolistic position gets rotted out by people running these companies who have no conception of a good product versus a bad product. They have no conception of the craftsmanship that's required to take a good idea and turn it into a good product. And they really have no feeling in their hearts, usually, about wanting to really help the
customer. There you go. And I think this is what is
at the core of the digital team, is the digital teams should be about product people, because you're trying to launch something new. You're trying to launch a product or a service that doesn't exist yet. And it's not enough if you're a sales guy or marketing guy trying to grab something and bring it on a plus 10%. No, this is about creating something new. And if you want to do that, you need to, of course, setting up a digital lab or a digital team or a corporate startup, it's a good start. But there's a couple of things we've learned in the last couple of years with working with a couple of these enterprises and setting this up. What can make or break this team, and how to make sure it's a team that is about product and not about corporate policy or other things. So that's the lessons that that I would like to share. There's 10 of those. Any questions, additions, other insights, please feel free to add at the end. But I'd like to step through them one by one. Be clear on the real goal. So usually the real goal of, for instance, a corporate startup, or the initial goal of the corporate startup is to begin to launch something, right? We're going to create Surface A, right? We're going to need architecture and design, we're going to build it, and we hook up a couple of data sources, and we get it out there. And the definition of success is the launch, right? And then, after that, the definition of success becomes the first batch of paying clients, and making sure that you hit a couple of numbers in 1 or 2 years of paying customers to your new product or service. And that's all very nice, but you have to consider right from the beginning on what's going to be the end game. What do you want, where do you want it to go? Do you want to make sure that your corporate startup lives on independently of the mothership as a separate brand or a separate product? Do you want to keep it separate? Or is it a Kickstarter for innovation of the mothership, right? If it is all about learning how to innovate and how to accelerate and how to create product for the mothership, then you should also focus on making sure you give back to that mothership and not only go by yourself. Or maybe it's a personal interest where you have the ambition to spin it out as a separate company or a separate business from the mothership. And you might want to consider all these options before you start, because after the initial sort of adrenaline rush of the first year into building something, once it's out there, once it's in the market, it becomes really difficult to decide upon where do you want to take it. Because the chances that it will be a smash success right from the beginning are very low. Typically, you sort of underperform. We've hoped to have 500 users by the end of the year. It turned out to be 200 users. So what do we do next? Do we spend extra at marketing, or do we keep on developing the product? Where do we want this to go? Those are the hard decisions that you will have to take about a year down the road. And it's very good that right from the beginning you're absolutely clear to yourself on where do you want to take this. You can't outsource it. Now, obviously, this is something that we as an agency live by the business of helping you build these teams and helping you build these labs and these startups. But to be successful, we noticed that the only way that can be successful if there's very strong ownership in the team at the client's end. So you have to own it, you have to be in the team. So the people with the clout in the mothership organization need to say, okay, you know, I give up my regular job, I'll switch over to the startup or to the team, and I go all in, and I'm going to make it happen. And we think the three people are absolutely crucial in that. Is someone with a good understanding of the business, and where is the market opportunity, where do we want to take it, product, what sort of product, what sort of UX, what sort of experience are we going to offer, and someone with a vision on technical architecture. Those three people should, from the mothership, at least be in the team, in the startup to make it successful, and then you can supplement from there. In the long run, if your team's going to be successful, if you're going to be running a separate business, if you're going to grow it, you should also always look for a healthy balance where there's enough of your own people in there and not outsource too much of it. So that's, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, but it's, I think it's, if you want to build a strong organization, you should have your own people. We do the same thing with Dept. We work with freelancers, we outsource some of our work, but at least 70 to 80% of all the hours that we produce are done by our own people because we believe in building an organization. Align interests. Typically, your team will consist of various parties, right? You have your own people, you source with an agency, you have a bunch of freelancers, whatever. Maybe there's two agencies in there, one for the marketing, one for the platform, one for UX. You might have a strategy consultant setting it all up. It's really, really difficult to run such a mixed bag of an organization if everyone is on a different contract. It's really simple, but if you have a contract with party A that says you have to deliver scope Y in a couple of months, and you have a contract with party B that says you need to create designs for that product, and you're on an hourly rate and you can spend as many hours as you like. And if you have a consulting agency whose task it is to try to squeeze costs, that's a setup for failure. Because there will be internal conflicts in the team, in the organization, right from the start. So I think the only way to properly do it is to make sure the entire team, the entire organization, no matter where anyone's coming from, if they're coming from Dept, if they're coming from freelance, they're coming from your mothership, they all need to be in the same boat. Success is best enjoyed, shared, and failure as well. So aligning that interest is in the setup of how you set up the team and the contracts. Tools, process, and culture. Now this is something that I want to elaborate on a little bit longer. Basically, you want to make sure there's a bit of an open source, an agile, quick, productive environment. And the way to do that, in our opinion, is to make sure that if you select the platforms and the tools and the processes, you make sure that it's something that is familiar to everyone that comes in. Because you never know where new people are going to be coming from, so you better make sure it's a familiar environment. If everyone in the tech world is using Slack, don't use Microsoft Teams, because the mothership says you have to. Right? It's just as simple as that. Newcomers will hate you for it if they can't use their favorite tools. Also, be very clear on how you work. Right? Are you going to be working all in the same location? Great, but then everybody needs to be there. So if you want to recruit someone and he says, yeah, but I like to work remotely, if your process and culture dictates that everyone has to be in the same room, it's not going to work. So don't recruit that person. Be very clear on how you want to organize it, because these are the choices that will define the culture of your startup. If the culture is that you have a stand-up at 8:30 or 9 a.m. and everyone needs to be there, then everyone needs to be there. If you're going to be very strict from the beginning on that, then it's effective life. Then newcomers will come in and will look like, oh, so this is the culture. This is the way it works here. I will adapt. And if I'm not adapting, then it's my fault and I will get out. Also the processes, the way you report, the way you, for instance, handle backlogs, the way you communicate about that, which, what sort of standards you implement on, like, if someone works on a work item in a backlog, how does he report on that? How does he communicate to the rest of the team what he has done, if he's failed, if he's finished, what sort of follow-up tasks need to be done. To set up the right platforms right from the beginning is absolutely crucial for the success of the team. So you need to spend time and invest time in that to make sure that it's also clear for newcomers to come in. And I'll get back to this one. Keep on selecting the team. Now, we've been in a lot of processes where in the beginning there was a lot of discussion on, okay, how do we set up the team? Who's going to do what? And can we plan it out for the coming 9 to 12 months? And which roles and which names, etc. I don't think it's that important. I think it's really important to select a core team of 3, 4, 5 people that are going to commit for the first 6 months. Those are the lead devs, the lead designers, the lead marketeers that will hook on the rest of the people. And that's your trusted team, right? Those are the guys or girls that you're going to be looking to get stuff done. The rest of the team should be obviously, preferably, really talented, but they should be considered interchangeable. Because the workload will shift dramatically during time, and it doesn't make sense to nail that all down because you want to be flexible, you want to be adaptive. I would say contract as flexible as you can. Make sure you have a ramp-on policy of about a day. In practice that will be maybe a month, but maybe you can negotiate that to around a week, where you can just swap in and out people as you go. Now, to facilitate this swapping in and out, I want to refer back to the previous thing, because if you want to be really flexible on that, you don't want to incur a big switch cost if you replace people. And the way to prevent switch costs is to make switching really easy. And the way to make it really easy is to make sure that the processes, the tools, and the culture are all very familiar. At one team that we worked on, we had a very, very simple policy. If a new developer comes in, he needs to be able to ship code to production at the end of the day. Simple as that. Now, if you think about how that works, what you need to do to accomplish that, it's tremendously complicated. Because it already starts at 9 AM when this new guy comes in. Can he use his own notebook, or does he need a company policy notebook? How does he get access? Where does he find information? How does he see what's going on? How does he produce code or produce design? Where does he deliver that? How is that tested? How is that approved? You don't want to have to spend 2, 3, 4 weeks with some guy, dragging him to HR or to IT support to fix his email or to fix access to systems or to fix whatever. You want people to be productive, and it's a sort of a litmus test of the quality of your process if you're able to swap in and out that fast and to get people that productive that fast. And I would spend a lot of effort in the beginning to make sure to get that absolutely right, because it will provide you with great flexibility in the long run. Start delivering fast. Now this is, it depends a little bit if you're an existing team working on existing platforms or products, or whether you're in a real sort of startup, trying to create something new from scratch and nothing's still out there. But let's assume the latter. In that situation, typically, the first 2 months is a lot of talking, a lot of sort of trying to find out what we're going to actually build, which tools and platforms we're going to use. Are we going to build everything from scratch? Are we going to use Salesforce? How are we going to do this? And that sort of 2 months is already lost. And then the first sort of mock-ups come to life and a sort of, you know, box proof of concepts on trying to get an entire flow working comes to life. I think that you should always try to get something into production in at most 4 months, because it puts pressure on you to make sure to get something out there and to force decisions right at the beginning, because it's really, really easy to waste a lot of time in the beginning talking. And if you create a culture of talking, that will send a clear message to the team that it's okay to talk, right? And you want the team to produce a product. And the best product people hate talking. They love creating product. So get that culture of creating stuff and getting it out there by forcing yourself to push it out there. It's not going to be perfect. You don't care. And the whole dynamics change when something's out there. Once a product's out there, you both have to build new stuff and maintain what's out there. And the development, the maintenance, and improvement cycle changes. But the good thing is, in the end, that's what you're going to be doing anyway for the rest of your organization's existence, because your whole goal is to have existing products out there. So you might as well get into the rhythm as quick as possible. Because it's a totally different game to have something running on your test and dev engines and versus have something running on production. So you want to get to that point. And one way of making sure that you get something out there is to resist the MVP creep. And MVP creep is very, very real. It's always there. I have one example of a financial or a fintech startup where we were in, and in the sign-up process, there needed to be an identification flow. We've spent literally 2 months selecting identification providers, implementing their platforms, yada, 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 because it needed to be in the first release, in the MVP release. Why did it need to be? Because it sort of got to a sort of a general management expectation that it was in there. Now, if you look back to the definition of MVP, minimum viable product, if you want to sign up your first customers, it's okay to send out a guy on a scooter. If someone signs up and says, we'll identify you, we'll come to your door the next day, we'll make sure you're identified. Right? You don't need to have it in your MVP product. So you need to be very strict on what's sort of the bare minimum to see if this commercially works. Because we spent, I would say, 2 or 3 months too much on implementing all sorts of features like this. And when we got out there, we found out that one of our core premises, that this would be a product for a certain category of businesses, failed. Because it turned out that those sort of businesses were not waiting for this product. And once we had it out there, and we discovered that after the first feedback rounds that we had with test panels, etc., it was like, okay, we need to completely re-engineer a whole lot of our UX, a whole lot of our information infrastructure, because we needed to accommodate a different type of businesses in the platform. So resist it. Make sure, if someone pushes for a feature, it absolutely needs to be in the MVP. Ask why at least 5 times. Legacy. So not all startups have the luxury to be able to build something completely clean sheet, separate cloud, build it on AWS. We're not connecting to anything. We can build it fully freely by ourselves. No. Reality, many platforms, especially for instance in B2B, rely on existing ERP systems, backend systems, what have you. You need to integrate with the legacy, you just want to create a new layer over it. If that's the case, then you don't want to get stuck in eternal IT discussions. Because once again, your product people that are in your team are going to be running away crying if you do that. So you want to make sure that you want to keep your team as fast and productive as possible, while on the other hand, dealing with the reality of eventually having to integrate with this legacy. Now, the key word here is eventually. DXP stands for Digital Experience Platform. And I want to explain it really simple, you can build a sort of an intermediate placeholder place to solve issues that you can later move back to the legacy. Very simple example. If you would be an energy supplier, like maybe an eco, and your core business is about supplying energy, and all your ERP is tailored right to that, right? I mean, we have client records, administering gas, electricity, and it's all in there. But now, in your digital team, you want to explore, what about our business if we offer new services, like, I don't know, home security? Yeah, let's do that. But yeah, it's our existing clients, and our client record needs to be complete. So we need to adapt the ERP to accommodate information about which home security services did this client subscribe to. Now the way to solve that is to say, we'll build a DXP. It's sort of a mixed zone system where we temporarily hold this information about these new services. Don't worry, IT people, legal people, compliance people, it's all secure, right? But it's just not in your back office yet. And we set it up in a way that eventually you're able to move it to your back office if so desired. So this is a strategy to make sure you're going to be fast while also compliant. Don't over-architect. If you're setting up a startup or a team and you set up a new product and you get the product people in and the cloud people and the cool kids and the fast kids, they all want to build something that's really neat, it's really scalable, it's really cloud, it's really out there, and they're all dreaming about world domination, right? So they're thinking about, okay, we need to build a product that's as scalable as Instagram or as scalable as TikTok or whatever. And they're going wild on making sure we use all the right AWS Lambda functions because we might have a bazillion users in the first month. You're not going to have that. So if in your team you're noticing endless discussions about architecture, and it happens, cut it short. You guys, it doesn't matter which technology or which architecture you're going to use, as long as you pick one. And you just, even if you don't understand it, but if you're leading the team, you force the guys to pick one and to stick to it. Because the good thing about standards is that there's so many to choose from. Choose one standard, stick to it, make it simple, don't over-architect it. If you run into problems later, fix them later. The first problem is to get the business off the ground in the first place. So it's a luxury problem if you run into scalability issues, etc. And don't be scared that in two or 3 years' time you might have to throw away a whole platform and re-engineer it all the way, because it will be a lot quicker to do it at that time anyway. And it will have helped you in the beginning if you just speed it along. And then the last one, deliver on the right promises to the board. Someone is paying this little adventure of you, right? And that's typically the board of the mothership. And they can be very patient because they all want digital transformation, they all want innovation, they all want anything. But in the end, their neck is on the line as well. Right? I mean, if they said, okay, we're going to plunge 10 million into this innovation program, they want to get results. Now, you can be strategic about this. I think it's all about delivering the right promises to the board. Right? Don't be promising like, okay, we're going to do so much turnover, we're going to have so much users if you're not absolutely sure you're going to make it. But what you can be sure on is launching something. as long as you have an MVP approach. Right? If you accept that you have flexibility into what you launch, you can guarantee when you launch. Right? So those are the things that matter. And if you promise a board, like we're launching our first MVP product in September, and if it's out there, if you have a big presentation, if you invite the board members for the launch party, make them shine on the podium, they're going to be really, really happy. Right? But don't promise, like, okay, we're going to be delivering this turnover and then fail on it. Because failure on this sort of aspects is not tolerable in real world boards. So don't do that. That's my 10 lessons that we learned in the startups that we worked for. Thank you.